Welcome to the positivity, the global mental wellness and positivity experience. We are super, super happy that you are here. And we are grateful, very, 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 very grateful because I have the honor and privilege to bring to you an experience and a journey into how to be more like a dog. Lee, I am so delighted that you're here. How are you?
Good morning, Jackie. I'm well, thank you. How about yourself?
I am doing well.
You are so full of energy and enthusiasm, and this is a great way to kick off a Monday morning.
In a great way to just be in the world. All right. So Lee, we're going to take people on a journey. And the first part of the journey is what led you to actually working with a dog. I mean, that's, you did not start out working with dogs.
That's right. I didn't. My journey working with Shadow began about 5 years ago when I had a traumatic family event happen and experienced PTSD from that. I brought Shadow into my life as a service dog for PTSD, and that's where I first experienced in a deeper level how helpful a canine can be in just making it through each day. He was always joyful. He is always joyful. His tail is always wagging. How can you not be energized and enthused with a dog like that? After my symptoms decreased, I did not want those talents and abilities to go to waste. And so Shadow and I trained and are certified with National Crisis Response Canines. And we go out as a team and support our first responders who have experienced trauma. We also were down at Surfside, the condominium collapse in Florida, not too long ago, and watching, it was just powerful watching Shadow.
Okay, whoa. You're not going to get away with that. Okay, we're going to take people there because this is the definition of trauma. Yeah, something so unimaginably horrible as a building collapsing in the middle of the night. Okay, this is unimaginably horrible. The impact on the entire community, and it was a very close-knit community. Yeah, it was huge. I mean, there's not a word for it. And the community, the epicenter in Surfside just rang throughout the world. And it was like, we lost our sense of safety, and we've had our sense of safety pulled away from us in numerous different ways over the last few years. So you were walking into an environment of shock and grief and fear.
Yes.
And tell us the story from Shadow's point of view.
From Shadow's point of view. He's always excited to meet new people. So our journey in Florida began with coffee in the morning at Cali Coffee, where the first responders, it was their place to get coffee each morning. And so he was meeting some of the people who were directly involved in the search and recovery. And he just would go up to them and wag his tail and look for attention. So from his perspective, it was, I love this. I'm getting lots of belly scratches. More importantly, from my perspective, watching what he did for each of them, watching the first responders come in, just kind of, you could tell it was heavy for them. and they saw our dogs and they started standing up straighter and smiling and laughing as they patted. And it encouraged them to start sharing some of their story. So back to Shadow's perspective with that beginning piece, he just was being himself and getting lots of loves, but the impact he made was huge. Our first day being with the victims and the families in one of the hotel rooms that was hosting them, where these people were receiving their briefings twice a day and getting lots of support from all over the place. Shadow walked into a room of heavy emotion, of lots of tears, anxiety, fear, confusion, emotions that all of us would pick up on in some form or another. I know for myself, I felt the weight of it walking into that room. And what we allowed our dogs to do was just mingle. And Shadow, somehow, dogs have this incredible intuition, this sense. He just picked people out and walked over. People who just needed the care and the support of a safe pet to pat. It's proven that patting animals lowers your blood pressure and your stress level. And it seems like he just found the right folks to go to.
So what's Shadow's secret for finding the right folks to go to?
I wish I knew. If I could find the right folks to go to as regularly as he does. They pick up on the emotions. They pick up on the intensity somehow. Yeah. One person that he went to, I still get emotional every time I think of this woman. So there was a woman in a chair, just curled up, kind of bent. And Shadow walked over and like he had his target, just drew me over there. He walked over, laid across her feet. And I just knelt on the floor beside him and I said, is this okay? And she was okay with that. It took about half an hour, Jackie, but what Shadow did for her, like I said, she was all curled up. And eventually she reached out and just touched him. And then that touch became a little bit of movement. And in time, she was stroking his whole back. Shadow is a black lab. And she started to uncurl and sit up a little straighter. And after about half an hour, Jackie, she looked over at me and she said, "Thank you for letting me pat him. You're welcome." And that moment she opened up. She began to share her story with me. She had been away from the condo that evening, but her husband, her only child, her daughter, her son-in-law, and her only grandchild were lost. And I don't think she would have been able to open up and share that with me had Shadow not given her the safe space to gently and calmly sit up and be more aware of her surroundings and be able to talk.
It's an interesting point since Shadow can't speak.
Right?
And so that's a beautiful perspective that what Shadow brought was simply presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The ministry of presence. And I use those words often, both for myself when I'm walking a journey of grief and death and trauma with the folks I'm with. It's, you don't have to have the answers. Just be there, just be a presence, be a space where people can share their stories.
You know, there was a psychological framework that became very popular, and it was called active listening.
Yes.
And what I'm getting a sense of is that if active listening is a dramatic improvement over how most of us listen, which is we listen thinking about how we're going to respond. So we're half listening. So
Right.
Active listening is trying to just stay with whatever is being said without the need to think about what we're going to say next.
Right.
Shadow takes it to a whole new level because there's nothing effortful about it. He doesn't have to actively do anything. He just has to show up.
Right.
So I'm imagining what life would be like if I believed that all I needed to do was show up. That I didn't have to have answers, that I didn't have to figure anything out, that I didn't have to be brilliant, that I didn't have to know the right thing to say, that all I had to do was show up.
Just be there.
So let's take people on a journey of what they can actually do that will help them be more like Shadow.
It takes practice.
Okay, so I mean,
sure.
you've got a background, so go ahead and share, because you have a background, like, so let's give them all the different aspects of where this knowledge is coming through.
Yes, so this knowledge comes from my own personal experience and having people who held the space for me. It also comes from my professional background as a chaplain, as a clergy person, and as an end-of-life and grief coach. So I work with people who are dying, their families, and then with lots of people in the journey of grief. I also am a first responder chaplain, and so I'm often with the world of first responders and their traumatic events, which, unlike most of us, they can experience a traumatic event 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. I've been doing it for many, many years. It's an incredible honor. And learning to put my own thoughts, my own reactions, my own questions aside. As you said, often when people are talking to us, we're forming our questions, our thoughts, our answers to their things, right? It's not easy to turn that off, but when you can just be a presence and fully listen to a person share their story, it creates an energy in the space where people can feel safe to share whatever they need to share and know that they're not going to be judged or criticized or told, oh, you should feel this way instead, or this is what you should do in response. Just be quiet and listen and let the silence be okay.
There's a cultural need for noise.
For noise, yes.
For noise. It's as though the silence no longer feels safe. You know, and
Exactly.
this was brought up, I think it was Eat, Pray, Love, where she was you're like Susie Sunshine for a group that was coming in for a 7-day silent retreat.
Mm.
And she realized that people were scared. Yeah. And without deep diving into, why are we afraid of silence?
Mm.
Let's go with how do we become more comfortable with it?
Mm. I'm reminded of a client I had once who I invited her to be in the silence, to just settle and ease and come to a space of calm. For her, that was terrifying. I said, how about just for 30 seconds? And she said, I can't even for 30 seconds. We're afraid, I think, that our thoughts are going to be overwhelming, that the silence opens the space for the things that we're pushing into the background to come to the fore. I think ways that we can become more able to do that is baby steps. Can you do just 1 minute of just being in silence? And gradually build that up. And as you're in that silence, become aware of your surroundings. Tune into, what are the things that I hear? Can you start hearing those things which you weren't aware were there to begin with? Maybe if you're outside, it's just the sound of the breeze blowing through the trees. Or maybe it's the sound of the kids laughing down the street. What do you smell? What do you see? And when we can focus on those other pieces around us, they in turn bring us a sense of stillness and wellness. And for some, that 1 minute might be far too much. And okay, I'm ready to be on the go and be noisy and let the world take over my thoughts. But give it a try. And try again, because it does come to where it feels natural and it feels comfortable. And you can build up that time. And it actually becomes a time that we can be renewed and refreshed and be able to go back into this crazy world that we live in with all its chaos and stress and overwhelm.
There was something that I remember when you were at Surfside, you were posting we're in several groups together. And one of the pictures you posted was you had the dogs, you and someone else. There was Shadow and some other dogs, and they were at the beach and playing in the water.
Yes.
And what you posted was how important that was for them to be able to discharge the energy that they had picked up from just being in that very intense and emotional environment around the first responders and around the victims and the community.
Mm-hmm.
Share more about that, because how did you come into this awareness that this was important for Shadow to be able to have that time?
Mm-hmm. That was part of our training, and that came from the original founder of this work of Canine Crisis Response, who brought her dog to the pile of 9/11. And watching the dogs who came initially with, as I described, Shadow, their tails wagging, eager to be with people. And over the time of being there, just couldn't do it anymore, were reluctant to go see people. And Cindy realized the impact of the weight of the situation for the dogs themselves, and how important it was for them to have short on the clock times and then go be just a puppy again. We think of, or I think of anyway, just being a kid again. when life is crazy, just go outside and splash in the rain puddles or do whatever you love to do as a kid, right? And laugh and have fun. And it's the same for the dogs. We were only allowed 4-hour shifts with our canines, and then we had to go do something fun for them. And watching Shadow at the beach was so neat because he's a lab, but he had never swum before. He didn't like the water, but he ended up jumping in and just, releasing so much energy. I think we can learn a lot from our canines.
Absolutely. This is a huge, huge lesson in this idea of giving that the fastest way to recharge is to go back to play. Shadow didn't have to give himself permission. As humans, we get so caught up in being adults. I think we kind of have to have somebody give us permission to go play.
Yes, go play, everyone. I'm giving you permission now.
There we go. So the power of this lesson, this one piece, that there's huge impact in being able to stay present, just without judgment, without needing to fix anything. And for those of us who are chronic problem solvers, the idea of just being able to be present was almost foreign until the last year or so for me. So as I'm coming into this new awareness of this power of being present, I had not yet grasped the balancing that play could bring to that. For those who don't know my story, I'm the acting director of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, and I fought tooth and nail not to be in this position, not to be standing on stages and talking about this topic, because the last thing I wanted was to get off a stage and have someone come up and want to tell me their story. And I know that being heard is one of our visceral human needs. I didn't think I had the capacity. And so it's only been this last year or so with understanding that it's not my capacity. I don't need to have capacity. I just need to be present. And that it has, that other people's emotions don't have to be something that sticks to me like I was wearing emotional Velcro, which is how I grew up. I mean, I grew up where I could walk across a room and other people's emotions would be stuck to me, especially their negatively charged emotions, and it would get really heavy. Like what you were describing with the dogs at the pile at 9/11, they got heavy with it. Not having the skill, not having the knowledge of how to release that, how to be coated with more Teflon so that emotions can slide off and not get hooked. That skill in and of itself would probably change the world if we can just walk people through an exercise that you use that helps you stay present and unhooked by other people's emotions. That, I think, would be a gift that we could give to the world. Now, because we have no control over whether somebody is listening to this while they're driving, let's not tell them to close their eyes without a huge disclaimer. If you're driving, turn this off and come back later. Hit pause. Yeah.
Right. Oh, one of the simplest exercises, and it's one that I use very frequently, is breathing.
Well, I do that on a regular basis.
I think a lot of us do. But a lot of us breathe, rapidly, and we're not even aware of it. There's a whole physiological stuff that I won't go into. It's not the science that's important. It's the exercise of doing it. So when I'm in the midst of something like Surfside, where I'm seeing and talking to person after person after person, I take a minute in between each person and I take a very deep breath. I fill up, and I encourage you to do this. Fill up your belly. And when you think it's full, fill it some more. As full as you can go, and hold it for 3 seconds. And then release as slowly as you can and as fully as you can. And do that 2 or 3 times. And you'll feel yourself go from, a tightly wound ball, perhaps in some form or another, to just a sigh comes. A sigh of, okay, I can move in and do this again. And you don't have to be in a traumatic situation with people who are in crisis to do this. Do it before you go into your meeting at work with the boss and the finance people, and it's going to be intense. Do it afterwards so that you can move into the next piece of the day.
So the physiology of breathing, I'm going to invite you to take us there, because what you just described is a beautiful awareness that energetically we tend to carry energy from one meeting to another, from one situation to another, and that we can pause and breathe and dissipate the energy.
Right.
So that we're not, because this is, I think, very telling. You were talking about the dogs getting weighted down, and I'm going, by the end of the workday, when someone is chronically exhausted, that's their experience of the workday, perhaps it's because they've got this accumulation of energy from meeting to meeting, from phone call to phone call, from client to client.
Right.
Yeah. So if they could embrace this one idea of pausing and breathing and allowing the energy to dissipate between each event of their day, between each phone call, they might discover they're not as tired at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the physiology, because inquiring minds want to know what's really going on when we fill our lungs so full that our bellies have to move.
Yes. So first, let me start with the rapid breathing. When we're doing that, we're taking in more breath than we're exhaling. So we're not getting rid of the carbon dioxide that builds up in our body as efficiently as we should. And we're not replacing that as efficiently with oxygen. We know that we need the healthy, good air to keep on going. And so when we're doing the deep breathing, we're intentionally bringing in more of what we need and exhaling and letting go of all the old air. Our blood circulates more fully, more healthily. When we're in fight or flight mode, which unfortunately often in today's society, we experience that far too much without even realizing it. We talk about the high intensity meeting. A lot of people will go into something like that with that fight, flight, freeze perspective. And that's great for our way back when ancestors who needed to be prepared for everything that was going to come after them, right? Yeah. When we do that, our bodies take all of our blood and all of our oxygen to our thorax to take care of our organs, and our extremities lose it. So that deep breath helps bring it back to the extremities. It might not seem like much, and it might not seem that as you look at your own day that you're in fight, flight, or freeze. But stop and think about it. How often is the stress so heavy that you worry about your job, that you worry about your family, that you worry about your health? They may seem little, but they pile up.
So the worry itself is both a symptom of being in fight or flight and a trigger for being in fight or flight.
It
Okay,
is.
double whammy. All right.
Double whammy for
So
sure.
worry is a double whammy. The power of breathing to shift the physiology, to allow for blood to circulate more fully in the body, means that more healing can happen.
Yes.
More blood flow, more possibility of healing, no matter what we are healing from. But
That's
something
right.
you said reminded me of my scenario, because I don't have a lot of real dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers in my life. But I used to have a boss who would stand behind me and he would ask me a question and I wouldn't be able to give him the answer. I mean, at best, I could simply say, I'll find out, or I'll get back to you.
Right.
And he would leave. And once he left, I would go, and then I would be able to remember it. And I'm going, oh crap, when you talk about the blood leaving the extremities, this is an extremity.
It is. And that's a perfect example. So for all of you.
So it's leaves froze right in the middle of that. Amazing. For all of you on the call, we can extrapolate that she's going to unglitch her video and come back and tell us what all of us need to do. But for the moment, we'll just practice taking a deep breath and let tech untangle itself. The good news is we have untangling tech help. And if she has to pop out, then we know that tech will help her pop back in. But what a delightful place to be in a conversation where it's all about using the skills and being able to come back in. And there you are, Lee. All right, unmute yourself, darling, so that way you can be heard again.
There we go. We
All
have
right.
storms in the area, so I'm not sure what's going on.
And the sentence in the middle was, so for all of you.
Oh, goodness. For all of you who are listening, can you name your saber-toothed tiger?
Ooh.
And when you name that tiger, that's when you can truly begin to not freeze, not fight, not flight.
It's an interesting point for understanding that it's not about making the tiger anything other than what the tiger is. Right. It is simply about the awareness that says, oh, this person, this scenario, because it wasn't my boss that triggered me into fight or flight. It was anyone, and I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was just about him, but it was actually about me, and anyone standing behind me would trigger that same response. And it was becoming aware of that. Then it was like, change my office so that people can't walk up behind me. First change my environment. And then I could start unpacking where that trigger was coming from.
Right.
And, that led me into the work that I do with resolving negative emotional history for people. The understanding of that's what it was for me. It was nothing more than some unresolved negative emotional history that had to do with somebody coming up behind me.
Right.
It had nothing to do with the boss. But I had to take it one piece at a time and first give myself permission to control my environment so I wasn't triggered as often. Mm-hmm. Before I could, work with the world. Right. A simple sign on a cubicle that says, please knock before entering, is a simple way that people can start to just put some parameters around their environment that reduces their triggering. But you have to be aware. Right. Of when you're being triggered. When are you holding your breath? When are you breathing shallowly? When are you not able to think clearly? Yeah. So those are all symptoms that, for me, what are other symptoms that somebody might want to use that as when this happens, remember to breathe? or remember to breathe before this.
Yeah, you're right that it's becoming aware of what are your triggers. So asking yourself throughout the day, what's making me uncomfortable? It might be something small, and that's okay, because we can work with the small things and that helps with the bigger things.
Yeah, baby steps there.
Baby
I
steps.
like that a lot.
I also think that having your team of 2 a.m.ers is what I call them. Yep, right.
A team of 2 a.m.ers.
Yes, yep. Who are the people in your world that you can call any time of night or day? And name them. Let them know that they are your 2 a.m.ers. Ask permission. So be thinking of, truly, you got a horrific phone call in the middle of the night and you need to call someone for support. Who is that? But also the people that you call your 2 a.m.ers are also the people who come to know you the best, who you can be open and honest and share anything with. So you think about your day and, this bugs me. This is triggering me. Having someone who knows you to just say, hey, this triggers. Are you aware of anything? You'd be surprised at what other people notice in you that you're not aware of, but also a trusted person that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can say, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. People who can hold that space for you so you feel safe to explore what that trigger is.
Somebody who might wait until I ask them for their opinion before they try to help me fix it. that just took my list and cut it in half. Yeah.
Yeah, and start creating your list of people now. Don't wait until it's something huge that you need them for.
All right, so creating your list of 2 a.m.ers now. And, full disclosure, I was not a good 2 a.m.er for my kids because I go to problem solving. Default. That's you bring me a problem, that's what I do. So my daughters had to retrain me. In their 30s, they would now start conversations with, I just called to vent.
Yes.
AKA, shut up and listen, Mom. And we had to balance that with, do you have space? And so it was a two-way street. It was both clarity about their need, but it was also this place of graciousness about asking permission before they just dumped. And I think that getting the conversation with a 2 a.m.er in advance, what you said, let them know that you feel that they are your 2 a.m. people, is by de facto asking their permission. Are you willing to be my 2 a.m.er?
Right.
Are you willing to hold a space, not fix, just listen, whatever the language is that works within your family. And I can see where not every family would communicate the same.
Right.
Yeah. On this, but it's a brilliant strategy that I think is missing this idea of informing and asking permission. And so, Lee, if you turn your video camera off, you might be able to speak up. Oh, there you go. You're back. Popping in and out today.
I am so sorry.
We can control a lot of things. Weather is not high on my list of things I can control.
Yeah, mine either, unfortunately.
And technology is even lower on my list of things I can control.
Thank God for Katie Miller, right?
So that reference is to the tech guru who is behind the scenes of near about everything I do now. And there she is. Ta-da! She turned her camera on for us. So the power of this conversation to help people understand that the reason that dogs can come into these very intense environments and make a difference, make it possible for people to start to process their emotions and not get locked in them, is predicated on their ability to just be present. You know, they don't have to consciously trust their instincts. They act more on the intuitive level. As you said, Shadow told you who he was going to go talk to.
Exactly.
Yeah. He did not need direction. Wouldn't it be nice if we could hold that space for each other that you hold for Shadow, where you don't try to direct him? Yeah. We are challenged to do that for each other some days, to just trust that everyone is interdirected, creative, capable, and resourceful enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in that space of silence gives the person not only a safe space to explore, but the silence has an opportunity for that person to think through and come to their own conclusions, their own answers. Because I truly believe that all of us have our own answers. We just don't know how to get to them. And silence is one of the ways.
Yeah, the power of the general state of the world to shut us down can be flipped around by this simple awareness. But you brought up a really good point, which is the silence for ourselves gives us a chance to process what's going on. And I'm going to highly recommend that anyone who is new to the practice of pausing, of breathing, of allowing silence, don't do this alone. Take a guide, have someone who can hold space, find a 2 a.m.er to even just practice this piece with.
That's a good point, Jackie. Yes.
Yeah. I think that that's really, really important. There's a power in all of the conversations, Lee, that is missing, I think. The idea of being willing to walk into an intense situation, taking care of yourself first with doing some breathing, sort of taking on some emotional Teflon. You know, this idea that that's all you have to do is just be able to be present. Just be a little bit more like a dog.
Wag your tail. I also want to say to people who might be invited to be a 2 a.m.er, know yourself and feel okay to say, no, I'm not sure that I can do that. Right? Because not all of us have that emotional Teflon, Jackie. I love that term, to be able to hold this space. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
I noticed a comment in the chat asking if someone has the brain space before speaking to them. Very true. You know, I've got a daughter who I can call, and I start with, I'm not calling just to say, hey, do you have a minute for me to just be crazy? And she is someone who I can just let it all go.
And you can trust her to be honest about whether or not she has the space.
Exactly. And she has told me, no, not now. Can you call me later? Yep.
there's such a missing link, and I just got what it was.
What's that?
Shadow's honest. The dogs are honest. When they don't have space, they communicated that they didn't have space.
Yes.
You know, the dog said no.
Yeah.
And how many times do we discount our own no? I don't have space for this, and we push ourselves anyway, and the outcome might not be as good as it could have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to practice. Are you someone who can say no easily or not? And if you're not, I certainly wasn't. It took me a long time to be able to say no. And I had to start with little tiny no's and feel okay saying no to something tiny. And, you know, baby steps all along the way.
All right, let's play for just a minute. Let's play with how to be more like a dog. When a dog says no, a dog simply stops. Yeah, they just simply stop.
Yes.
We usually have to communicate with words. So what just came to mind is, how many ways can we say no without using the word no?
Oh,
And I'm going, aha, this could be a fun game, because for anybody who people pleasing, you know, in recovery, you know, for anybody who has ever struggled with this, I don't want to disappoint someone. I'll feel guilty if I say no, which, by the way, is one of the most powerful assertiveness training books ever written. It has a big red no on the cover, and it says, when I say no, I feel guilty. And it's an assertiveness training book. The number of ways to say no. My favorite now is, I'm not available. So I'm not, nothing about you, nothing about your request. I'm not available.
yes.
So that's become my go-to.
That's a good way to say no. In hearing what you said about, it's nothing about you, it's me right now. And if we can say that in our communication, that helps eliminate some of that guilt, because we're saying, we're not trying to hurt you, offend you, ignore you, tell you you're not important enough for any of those, right? We can own it ourselves.
And you don't have to say that to them, by the way. I wasn't meaning that I would tell somebody this is not about you. It's just, that's the impact that my saying I'm not available has. And the reason I don't recommend telling people, it's not about you, is because there was this whole joke about relationships where when someone says, it's not about you, and the meaning is, it's you. and so this was a relationship joking thing that was a really popular kind of meme for a while. And so the power of the journey to be able to say no where you're owning it, and to not need to even say anything about them at all. Yeah, it's just, I'm not available. So anybody who has another go-to phrase that they like to use for saying no without saying no, pop it into the chat and we'll read them out loud and share them with people, because this is an interesting thing. I'm really wondering why we picked up not being able to say no, when most of us heard that word repeatedly growing up. It was a normal part of our conversations or directions or whatever. And yet we struggle to say it.
Right, we do. I've, for myself personally, because yes, I heard no all the time. I think for me, saying no is hard because I know what it feels like on the receiving end of the no. And I don't want people I care about to feel that way.
Ooh. Boy, we do take a lot of responsibility for other people's emotions, don't we?
We do. We do.
If I, wow. What would happen if we let other people's emotions be other people's emotions?
Yes.
I don't want anybody taking responsibility for my emotions.
Right?
I
Neither
mean,
do I.
yeah. That's funny though, because I hear it happen in the grocery store. You know, I mean, a couple of aisles over, I'll hear an adult and a kid get into a verbal scuffle. And all of a sudden the adult will say, "You make me so mad." And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, what a heavy burden to put on a kid.
Right?
And yet I think that that's what I learned growing up, was that I was responsible for the emotional state and stability of the adults around me.
Yes.
You know, unpacking that one took this journey.
Mhm. Mhm.
I highly recommend deep breathing and having a guide. You know?
Yes. You don't know what, when you begin to explore a trigger, you don't know what might be deep inside. And so having a guide with you is really important.
Yeah.
Really important.
And knowing who your 2 a.m.ers are.
Yep.
What a great
Even-
takeaway.
Even if your 2 a.m.er is a dog named Shadow.
Ah, there you go.
Right?
Oh, that's a good point. It does not have to be a human. Your 2 a.m.er is just a presence.
Yes.
Got it.
Shadow has a few commands that trigger that presence. One of them that I use often is snuggle. And
Aw.
when I'm feeling that place where I just need someone to hold the space for me, lay down, I say snuggle, and he just snuggles right up next to me. And
there we go.
Yeah.
I see, yeah, find it works best. So what works
Right.
best? If you've got some ideas for how do you say no without saying no, it's a great place to be. It's a great signal, this idea of just the command of snuggle, asking for what you want. What a concept to actually directly ask for what we want in a relationship.
Yes.
You know, it's a powerful place, and it's not something that I was trained to do growing up. So it was an acquired skill.
Yep.
Clear, direct communication was an acquired skill. So
And that's something that you build with your 2 a.m.ers.
got it. Okay. Cool. All right. So things to practice, things to know. Love the world of dog. Thank you for taking us on this journey. It's a beautiful place to be.
And thank you for the opportunity. I love sharing about Shadow. In case you didn't know that already.
Thank you.